to you briefly about at the beginning, COVID, of course, the convention center, and downtown. And we'll talk briefly about those, and then, of course, I'll take your questions. So with regard to COVID, numbers are really staying pretty constant. We had 46 new cases yesterday. 258 people are in the hospital in the region, 59 are in ICU, 36 are on ventilators. The average number of people admitted to the hospital per day for the last 7 days has been 37. So we have been able to drop that a little bit, which is good. And then there were 27 people that were discharged from the hospital. Now, a couple of interesting things, reasonably interesting things. You know, we track weekly, daily really, but the average for last week in terms of how long it took between the time you had a test taken and the time you got the results back is running right at 4 days, just a little bit under 4 days. And that's the average for last week. 1 week well, I say 2 days last week, it was actually below 3, but one day it was up to almost 5. So it's running at about 4 days to get the results of a test back. That's an improvement over where it was a couple of 3 weeks ago. We still continue to see the highest percentage of new cases. Last week there were 178 new cases in the city of St. Louis. We continue to see 25% of those cases are folks in their 20s, 18% are folks in their 30s. So we're still running, those are still the two highest decades for number of cases. So that's really it with regard to COVID, but I know you'll have questions and we'll be glad to take those. The second thing, this is kind of an important step to be taken. This morning, the Municipal Finance Corporation voted to have the comptroller issue bonds for the expansion of the convention center when the comptroller believes it's the right time to do that. That's an important step that has been delayed for quite a while, actually. You know, we know that the convention business right now has been very, very affected by COVID. But now is a good time to plan for an expansion and an addition and improvement to the convention center so that our convention center will be competitive with convention centers in the Midwest, which is who we are primarily competing with. And lastly, downtown, downtown, you all know that we restricted a number of streets downtown to try to slow down traffic. We blocked a couple of blocks of Washington Avenue from 12th to 14th Street. We closed the Eads Bridge. These were all, I would call them emergency changes to really try to cut down on the speeding, the reckless driving, the illegal driving, and just the dangerous situation. So over the weekend, excuse me, and the police have put these numbers out, but I'll just highlight them for you. We had, in addition to the structural changes, we had a number of police officers in downtown. They made 4 arrests for felony fleeing, many parking tag tickets, unlawful use of a weapon, a couple of drug arrests, tampering, operating an ATV, 9 vehicles were towed, 3 ATVs were towed, and a motorcycle. So that is on the enforcement side. Overall, downtown was better this weekend than it had been in the past, but we're going to have to keep on it. So, Jacob, questions? guys are choking me up. Questions?
We have just a couple of questions from people asking about other streets in other parts of town, like for instance, like South Broadway, Natural Bridge, Grand, Goodfellow. Downtown's getting a lot of attention, but there are other streets in the city that have traffic and speeding problems as well.
You're absolutely right, and as some of you may know, Natural Bridge is slated for a lot of improvements. And those are just beginning to be made in order to slow traffic on Natural Bridge. That is a street where last year we named it one of the worst streets for speeding and for accidents. And we worked with Highway Patrol and the state in order to, because Natural Bridge, by the way, is a state road. Who would know that? But in order to make some improvements to narrow down that road. So that's certainly true. South Broadway, Gravois, Kings Highway, all are experiencing and have speeding and reckless driving from time to time. Downtown, over the last few weeks, has really just been exacerbated. We do know that when you begin enforcement and some changes on streets on one area, that it does move it to another area. That's why enforcement and arrests and tows and tickets are so important to this, because we don't want to just move it. We want to curtail it, period. But we know that it does move it around. You know, I saw an interesting thing on social media over the weekend, and that was that Worldwide Technologies Raceway over in Illinois actually had you could go for $25, and I think you had to show insurance or pass a little inspection or something, and you could actually race at the raceway under controlled conditions. You could also, and it started I think at midnight, you could also go and watch, and that's a much safer way to try to, you know, see how fast your car can go than it is to do that on our downtown streets or streets anywhere in the city of St. Louis.
Question from Kelly: do you think that the closed roads and
I think it made a difference. It didn't cure it completely, but it definitely made a difference. And we have to, you know, these are short-term solutions, so we've got to think about this in a short-term way, but also in a longer-term way in terms of what is right for these streets that are in the downtown area. Enforcement is dependent on having the officers, enough officers to be able to do this enforcement. There's a lot of overtime being worked all over the city of St. Louis because, of course, we have fewer officers than our table of organization calls for. In fact, this morning the number was 143 fewer than we need to have, and you know, that would make a difference if you had another 143 more officers. It would certainly make a difference on the enforcement side.
Question from Chris about downtown safety in general. How safe do you think downtown is, and what impact do you think COVID is having on downtown when the people who would normally be coming here aren't here?
You know, number one, downtown is a safe area. I've honestly worked in downtown every single day of my adult life, and downtown is safer. All areas are safer when there are more people on the streets. So that segues into your next question, which is COVID related to this? It is, because the fewer people that you know, many of you are working from home. You're not going to your office in downtown. So you're not out on the street going to lunch or staying even after work, maybe to get together with friends or have some dinner. So those things are definitely curtailing it, along with, we don't have any baseball in downtown right now. We're not having festivals. We haven't had any parades since, I don't know when the last parade was. Probably Christmas time. And so when you don't have those normal activities, you know, our streets are big, they are wide, they are designed to be able to handle a lot of traffic. And, you know, so when you don't have that normal traffic here in downtown, I do think it has an impact on downtown and other streets as well, but we're focusing on downtown right this minute.
So, sort of a neighborhood question from Juanita, who's asking about barricades and other traffic calming. How does someone request or go about getting things like speed bumps or barricades or bump outs in another neighborhood?
Well, several ways. One, begin working with your neighborhood association, begin working with your alderman. Speed humps, I think is what we're calling them now, or speed tables, are available on streets that are not main roads. And you do have to work with your alderman, because that's a ward capital improvement that they can fund for a speed hump. What were the other things? Oh, a bump out. Similarly, bump outs, you'll see at the corner, there'll be a bump out which, prevents people from going quite so fast at the corner. But those are things that I would suggest work with your neighborhood association and work with your alderman on those things, and then they can be implemented by our Board of Public Service.
Question from Jenna, Mayor. How long are the changes downtown in terms of the closed streets, restricted lanes, and heightened law enforcement presence going to last?
Jenna, I don't know the answer to that question. I mean, they've been up now for 4 days, I guess. We put them in last Thursday afternoon. So a while longer. I don't know the exact answer to that. This is a little bit of, we'll be tweaking some of this. Some of them will move a little. Maybe they're not exactly in the right place. The police department and our street department came together to make these recommendations initially, and so they're reevaluating it continually. But they'll be in place for a little while.
So a couple of COVID questions, Mayor. Christopher's question today is, have you noticed any improvements with COVID-19 since you put the time restraint on bars and restaurants to close at 11, or is it too soon to know?
It's a little bit too soon to know. That went into effect about, I think it has not been 2 weeks yet. So as you know, the incubation period is generally thought to be 7 to 10 days, but it can be as long as 14 days. So I think it's hard to know. It's an accumulation of things that we're hoping that drive the numbers down. Today, what was our number? Our new number yesterday was 46 new cases, 45 the day before, 43, 45, 35. So it is down from where we were in about the middle of August, which had a day at 61 and a day at 74. So it's not a drastic change, but it's at least bumping down a tiny bit. It's not going up. So it's hard to attribute that to, is it because more people are wearing masks? Is it because more people are socially distanced? I think it's probably a little bit of all of those things.
Question about bars and whether you can just close them. There are still reports of huge crowds celebrating birthdays, weddings, and other gatherings. This might be from a Lauren, I think.
Well, I don't think we want to close all bars, just like period, all day, every day. And what is a bar and what is a restaurant and what is an event space? I think if you have a situation where you see that bars or event spaces are not following masking and social distancing guidelines, then report that location to the health department. They will contact the bar, restaurant, event space, and they will do training with their staff and try to get them back on the right path.
COVID question from Robert, Mayor, about when the health department or the city might consider allowing youth sports and playgrounds.
So, that's a question that Dr. Eccles can revisit, but just like most kids are not going to in-person classes at school, the sports that are allowed are more the individual sports where you're not bumping up against other people. So I don't see those being allowed for a while. So
Emily?
I hate that, but we're trying to keep COVID down. We're trying to keep it down in the schools. SLPS, St. Louis Public Schools, starts a week from today, virtual. Dr. Adams I spoke with him this morning, and they have about a little over 10% of their kids, as it turns out, are going to be going to the instructional support centers. They've got about 20,000 kids, and so about 2,000 or 2,200, I think he said the number was, are going to the instructional support centers. We're trying to keep this from spreading, and I think, there'll be some lessons to be learned as other school districts. Some schools started today, and there were even a few schools who started last Monday. But almost all schools, in fact, I think all schools, I don't know of any schools in the city of St. Louis or in St. Louis County that are 100% in person. I'm sure there are some, as soon as I say that, but most of them have some component of virtual learning.
Emily has a new question. What's the risk of flooding looking like for the city of St. Louis this year? Where are the rivers at, and are the sewers working at optimum capacity?
Emily, the river is low. It is, somebody find that? Hang on a minute. Flood stage, by the way, is 30 feet, and right now it is, what does this say? 7 feet. Okay. I'm always hesitant when I'm handed a note, because am I really reading this right or not? So, we had a lot of rain a few weeks ago. We all remember that. But the stage of the Mississippi River, all the rivers really, depends more on what happens upstream from them than it does, how much it rains right here. So
That's all the questions we have today, Mayor.
that's all the questions for today. Goodness. Well, thank you all for being with us today. Appreciate your interest in this, and appreciate you joining us, and we'll be back and talk to you on Wednesday. Thanks.